say welcome, welcome, and thank you for turning out to share in this special moment when we salute the arrival of the legendary Buyboat Winnie Estelle.
Yay!
Winnie today becomes the newest addition to the Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum's fleet of historic Chesapeake vessels. 48 years ago, the museum saved and relocated the Navy Point, this 1879 lighthouse from Hooper Strait, 40 miles down the bay. And that was the start of many pretty exciting acquisitions in the following years. I don't know how all of you rank the many acquisitions, but I'll say, speaking for myself, I'll rank Winnie right up there with the best. I want to extend a special welcome and say thanks to those who are tied most closely to Winnie's rich history. First, Eugene and Cal Marshall, the son and grandson of Watson Shug Marshall. Shug was Winnie's last owner and captain in the days she passed by this Hooper Strait lighthouse. Her last days in service on the bay as a buyboat. Gene often worked on the boat with his dad, and he'll bring a vast number of great stories about Winnie's history in the days when she was doing what she was built to do. Then Captain Michael Whitehill, gentleman over here, the good-looking guy in the black beret. Michael should be applauded, for he's the one who brought Winnie back home to the Chesapeake, where she belongs. Thank you, Michael. We also must recognize and thank our most generous donor, who wishes to remain anonymous, for his special gift of Winnie to the museum. Last, we thank all of you, all our members and volunteers, who make possible everything we do at the Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum. Thank you. Now I'm pleased to turn the mic over to our Chief Curator, Pete Lesher, who can tell you probably about as much about Winnie's history as anyone at the moment, because he's been cramming like working to study for a final exam in the last 48 hours. Pete?
Thank you, Langley, and let me add my words of welcome to all of you here today. This is a momentous occasion for the museum because we add a really important historic vessel to our fleet. One that, going back to my days on this staff as an intern, we talked about what is a missing piece in the museum's collection. And we identified it as one of those missing pieces as a historic buyboat, a boat that freighted fish and oysters around the Chesapeake Bay to urban markets and to seafood packing houses. This is a boat that did that job for many, many years on the Chesapeake. When we collect an object for the museum, the important thing for us is really to collect the stories that go with it. And this particular boat is rich in stories. Built down in Crisfield in 1922, she was the second of at least 3 boats built by Noah T. Evans, a native of Smith Island. Now, builders generally had the privilege of naming a vessel only when they were also the first owner. And he did own her for the first 2 seasons of her existence, more or less. And so he named her Winnie Estelle for his 2 daughters, Winnie and Estelle, the second of whom just died a few years ago. Although Evans was only an occasional boat builder, his principal occupation was operating buyboats, buying fish and oysters directly from the watermen and taking it to those urban markets. She went up to Washington. She frequented the Yacomico River, where she was based for many years. Mundy Point, her owner Courtney operated her out of the Yacomico River, freighting things freighting fish scrap, freighting oysters down to Reedville and up to Washington. In 1960, she was purchased by more Smith Islanders. Watson Marie Marshall, Shug, who Langley mentioned, and his son Eugene Marshall. Under their ownership, she continued to frequent the Yacomico River, freighting fish scrap from the Yacomico down to Reedville and oysters up to Washington, getting back over to Smith Island and to Crisfield on a frequent basis. She took oysters, in fact, to the Bevins Oyster Company, still in business today and still in the same location today. When the Marshalls sold Winnie Estelle in 1976, she was taken down to the Caribbean, where she freighted lumber from Honduras to Belize. She later usually that trip down to the Caribbean was a one-way trip for old wooden Chesapeake boats. And she, like many others, got laid up on the beach, but she caught the eye of Roberto Smith, who restored her almost piece by piece to put her in the state we have her today. And the quality of his work done in the early to mid-90s is such that she's been able to, she's now on the verge of passing her Coast Guard inspection. She really is in remarkably good condition and built of remarkably durable materials, so she ought to serve us for many, many years to come. That work was done with integrity, and I look forward to being able to follow up on his work with our crew here at the museum. You'll see her maintained on our own marine railway. You'll have an opportunity to go out on the Miles River here, and we will be able to share her stories and stories of the Miles River for, we hope, generations to come. Thank you very much.
Winnie will give all of us a really authentic Chesapeake experience. She'll serve our members and visitors for many, many years to come, as Pete said. She'll help us understand the history and culture of the Bay. And I think the Winnie Estelle will be an absolutely perfect, splendid platform to deliver all of our rich multitude of on-the-water programs and experiences. Boat rides on the Miles River for our visitors. Educational and ecology programs for kids and adults alike. And let's not forget private charters. We're already taking some bookings. I see Bob Perkins over there, who I believe Bob and Kay are first in line. So they've got some dates reserved in June. You'll have to line up behind them. But think of a sunset cocktail cruise or a special cruise before a wedding rehearsal dinner or a special birthday party for your kids or grandchildren. I think it'll be a lot of fun. And now it's my pleasure to invite you to board the Winnie Estelle. I think Pete has some protocol in mind for taking folks on in groups. Anyone who cares to step aboard and check her out, you're welcome to do so. But again, thank you for coming. Thank you for helping us celebrate.